Hey, what's up, YouTube fans? So what I want to talk about on this video, right, is how primates, right, evolved many specialized features that help with life in the trees, right? Many of which us humans have inherited, right? Even though we no longer typically go in the trees, we still can tree climb, but we typically don't anymore. But we still have inherited many of the features evolved by early primates that were evolved specifically because of how they helped with life in the trees, right? But so in any event, I wanted to talk about the evolution of these features through the process of natural selection, right? And how these features give evolutionary advantage, right, through the process of natural selection. So basically, in order for a creature to be able to tree climb at all does not require that it be as well specialized towards tree climbing as primates are, which shows the reducibility of the features primates have that help make primates especially good at tree climbing, right? So, we see tree climbing, in many groups of tetrapods, lizards tree climb, cats tree climb, squirrels tree climb, bears tree climb. And so a creature doesn't need to be anywhere near as well specialized towards life in the trees as primates are in order to be able to tree climb at all, right? And for certain groups, right, there can be evolutionary advantage towards spending more time in the trees, right? And why would that be the case? Well, there's a few reasons you would realize if you think about it. For one thing, what if in your environment there are predators on the ground that are not themselves capable of tree climbing, and not any predators in the trees, or at least not as many predators in the trees, right? That creates an obvious evolutionary advantage to spending more time in the trees, right? Because you therefore are less likely to get eaten, right? Therefore, you're more likely to successfully produce offspring, right? Also, going up in the trees could help with accessing food up in the trees, right? So, fruits that are up there in the trees, various, foods growing from the trees themselves that are up high in the trees, right? And furthermore, for creatures that are already spending a lot of time in the trees, there can be evolutionary advantage to them being more skilled in tree climbing. Because there's a few reasons for this. So for one thing, the more skilled they are at tree climbing, the more likely they will be to successfully climb to the point of to the parts of the trees that have the various foods that they need, right, for their survival. So that's one reason. Also, another reason you would want to consider, right, is that the more skilled they are at tree climbing, the less likely they are to accidentally fall down and injure themselves and or even kill themselves by accident, right? Which would obviously make them less likely to reproduce, right? And so therefore, for reasons such as this, right, for creatures that are already spending a lot of time in the trees, variations within the species that improve their capacity to tree climb, make them more skilled at tree climbing, these variations can become more prevalent within the species over time. And so there are some groups of animals that have become particularly specialized at tree climbing. Primates are one of those groups. And some of the major changes that have to do with becoming more specialized in tree climbing, some of these changes are not actually like a whole new trait, but really just modifications of already existing traits, right? So like changes to the limbs, right? The fundamental structure of the limbs is the same across all tetrapods that still have their limbs, right? But it's been modified, tweaked in various ways, even though the fundamental structure has remained the same. It still has been modified, tweaked in various ways in differing lineages, right? As differing lineages have adapted towards using the limbs for very different purposes, such as climbing, flying, swimming, and simply walking, right? Many different lineages use the limbs for differing purposes and have adapted them towards differing purposes, right? And so the original purpose of the limbs when they were first evolved was mostly just for walking, right? Also some for swimming, right? When they were originally evolved, right? So walking and swimming was the original purposes, right? But then later on in some lineages, the limbs became specialized towards other purposes, such as climbing, right? And so primates evolved grasping ability of the hands as well as the feet. Now, in the case of us, we no longer have grasping feet, and that's because of a further modification that happened in our lineage as we went on to adapt towards bipedalism, right? But in any event, the limbs of primates are still fundamentally the same in structure as the limbs of like a dog, right, which cannot climb trees, right? But they simply are modified. The same fundamental structure, it's modified in a way that is better suited towards tree climbing. And in the case of us humans, even though we no longer tree climb, right, we still have limbs that are much better suited towards climbing than a dog's limbs are, right? And so, what else was I gonna say about that? Let's see. I guess that's about it. Well, oh yeah, so basically, this is what else I wanted to say, right, is as the ancestors of primates adapted towards tree climbing, and they modified the limbs towards tree climbing, this is how we got the arms and hands, right? Whereas originally, what's now our arms and hands were legs and feet, right? And the front legs and feet of tetrapods, which have legs and feet, they have the same fundamental structure as our arms and hands. Fundamentally, it's the same structure, right? But in our lineage, it simply became better adapted towards tree climbing. And so now we call it arms and hands, right? But fundamentally, right, your arms and hands have the same fundamental structure as a dog's front legs and feet, all of the same bones, humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, right? 5 toes. Dogs even have the same phalangeal formula as us. 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, right? So the same number of phalanges that you have in each of your fingers, right? It correlates with the number that we find in the toes of dogs, right, in their front toes, right? And the same is the case for most mammals, right? And so the evolution of the arms and hands, right, it didn't actually require evolving a totally new structure from scratch. Rather, it was really just a matter of modifying an already existing structure that already had a useful purpose before that, a different purpose, mind you, but a useful purpose nonetheless. It simply became modified towards a new purpose, right? And there were some modifications that further happened within some primate groups, but not others, that further improved the tree climbing ability, such as that in apes evolved a dorsally positioned scapula, allowing for highly mobile shoulders, right? And humans, because we are apes, we still have that feature, right? Whereas other primate groups like old world monkeys, they differ in that respect. And so a old world monkey does not have as mobile of shoulders, right? But you and a chimpanzee, we are apes. And so we have dorsally positioned scapula, allowing for highly mobile shoulders, right? And so this is also a great example of how structures can be repurposed through the course of evolution, and they don't have to have the same purpose every step along the way. All that really matters is that each step of the way they have some purpose that is useful towards reproducing. It doesn't actually have to be the same purpose every step along the way, right? So we no longer use our arms and hands as legs and feet, even though that's originally what their purpose was when they were first evolved, right? But now they're arms and hands, right? And we also no longer generally use them for tree climbing or climbing at all. We sometimes do, but generally more often we use them for like carrying things and building things and doing tasks like writing and typing and driving, right? We don't as much use them for climbing, but the um the fundamentals, the structure of our arms and hands, right, is still mostly the same as the arms and hands of a chimp, right? Even though a chimp uses its arms and hands not for writing or typing or driving. It uses its arms and hands mainly for tree climbing, right? And yet its arms and hands are structured mostly the same as your arms and hands, right? And so the arms and hands didn't have to originally be used for all of the purposes that us humans now use them for. Even when they first became arms and hands, they didn't have to be used for the purposes that we now use them for, us humans, as opposed towards mainly being used for tree climbing, as well as also still being used for support when moving on the ground, similar to legs and feet, right? Because a chimp, for example, a chimp uses its arms and hands like functionally similar to legs and feet when it's on the ground because they are quadrupedal, right? But for us, we're no longer even quadrupedal. We don't use our arms and hands for that purpose at all, right? But um they still have a useful function nonetheless, even though they don't have their original function that they were evolved for originally, right? For meaning that it's the reason why the feature persisted, why the feature was more successful, like why the individuals with the feature were more successful in producing offspring than other individuals that didn't have the feature, right? All right, that's all for now. See you guys.